Good morning, everyone. Just calling this meeting to order. And just to remind everyone that there's a timed item for 9:45. It's SC 28.1 Fence Exemption 119 Amberjack Boulevard. It's Ward 38. And we do have a deputation listed under that, SC 28.1 Fence Exemption. And so we have the introduction and enactment of general bills and bill to confirm the proceedings of Community Council will be the last items. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. I just need confirmation of minutes from January 16th meeting of Scarborough Community Council. Yep, so moved. And we're all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And before we review the agenda, we're going to have Councillor Kelly speak in regard to recognition of a very historical and memorable and enjoyable restaurant that's here in Scarborough that's absolutely famous. And we want Councillor Kelly to give his kind remarks, and then we'll all gather up front here for a photo.
Thank you, Chair. I hope I can stand for my remarks. About a month ago, Miroslav Glavich, a proud Scarborough resident, brought to my attention that Johnny's Hamburgers had been in business for 50 years, and yet there had been no public recognition of that accomplishment. And so he thought perhaps that something could be done. And what I did do with the cooperation of my colleagues around this table is prepare a scroll that all of us could sign, because this is an iconic Scarborough restaurant. And when I was talking to one of my colleagues at City Hall the other day about Johnny's, he said, well, what's iconic about it? And I replied, well, two things. First of all, in an era of unprecedented change, the same family has sold the same product in the same building for 50 years. That is a remarkable accomplishment. For many of us, the first contact might have been as kids. Councillor Hart took his girlfriends there. Big spender.
Big spender.
It could have been parents taking their kids there for the first time. Quite often, it's the workers on the other side of Victoria Park that patronize our patrons of Johnny's. So we've all interfaced with Johnny's one way or the other. The second thing that makes it iconic is not only its remarkable stability, but people come back. They come back to revive the warm memories that they associate with Johnny's. You know, this is where I took your mom, you know, for the first date, or this is where Grandpa and Grandma brought me for my first hamburger. But whatever the circumstance was originally, people try to relive it and revive it. Even after they've moved out of the neighborhood, even after they're working somewhere else, they still, from time to time, want to come back and relive the experience. And the reason, Speaker, why people come back to Johnny's is because they know that Johnny's hamburgers are the best in the business. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Johnny's for their community involvement. There isn't a community picnic or barbecue or seniors event that doesn't have gift coupons as door prizes. And whenever people win them, they're really excited. So you have a commercial success, you have a business that's embedded and gives back to the community, and the family that has done all of this over the years is the Sklavos family. And today we have Tassos here to receive the award. And I'll conclude with a final story. It's 1997. The city has been amalgamated. It's election time, and I and a few other Scarborough councillors were supporting Mel Lassman. Now, we knew that Mel knew North York like the back of his hand, but we weren't too sure what he knew about Scarborough. You know, Scarborough, 1/3 approximately of the landmass of this city, 1/4 of its population. So we got a bus, and the plan was to take Mel all across Scarborough to see it in its magnificent diversity. But the first place we took him to was Johnny's. Mel, welcome to Scarborough. Welcome to Johnny's. You've arrived. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Did everyone join me?
Yeah, I think everybody should get it.
Celebrating 50 years in business.
And we have, people should know, we have an honorary Scarborough councillor on this roll. And that's Shirley Kennedy. But she felt that people we work on the north side should be recognized on this roll as well.
Uh-oh, how many girlfriends? Never. Okay, so there's just two quick other issues that I wanted to address. It's Russell Crook's last meeting here at Scarborough Community Council, so we just wanted to acknowledge him and all of his hard work and wonderful work here on behalf of Scarborough Community Council. Thank you so much. And just one other point, is it point of privilege, Councillor Lee, or did you want to?
Thank you, Chair. I just received a text this morning that one of our federal colleagues, Salma Zahid, has been diagnosed with lymphoma. So she's sick leave of absence to go and get treatment.
Wow.
Just to let you know. Okay? So let's pray for her. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's the federal MP, Salma Zahid, was diagnosed with lymphoma, is it? I'm sorry to hear that, and we give her our acknowledgements from Scarborough Community Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we're going to go through the order paper, and just in recognition, there are a few absences today with Councillor Crawford and Councillor Thompson, who are on business currently on behalf of the city. And so I'll be moving a number of items on their behalf. So just giving you a heads up, if you just bear with me as we go through the agenda. So again, on SC 28.1, it's request for fence exemption, 119 Amberjack Boulevard. We do have a deputation on that.
Sorry, Madam Chair, on
Yes.
point of order. My staff contacted the two owners.
Yes.
I was not able to go out and meet them during our budget process, so they're comfortable deferring this to, I think it's our next meeting, which is in April. So I don't think the deputants are here because my staff said, the councillor will come and see you, but we'll do it next meeting.
Okay, and so just in order of the order, we just have to ask if there's anybody else here to speak on SC 28.1, which is 119 Amberjack Boulevard. It's fence in the front yard. Nope, seeing none. And so, Councillor Dubray-Maker, you're moving a motion to defer.
Defer to the next meeting, which I think is in April. April 4th.
Yep. Okay, so it's consideration of the item to be deferred until the next meeting, which is April 4th, 2018. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Okay, and then moving on to 2180 Lawrence Avenue East, zoning amendment application preliminary report. This is in Councillor Thompson's ward, and it's to move the staff recommendations on behalf of Councillor Thompson, and I'll be moving that. So all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Okay, and SC 28.3, which is 670, 680, 690 Progress Avenue, zoning amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications preliminary report. Councillor DeBearmaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move the staff recommendations as well as 3 additional recommendations, which include, and I'll explain them in a second, planning staff consulting with the applicant, the local councillor, other appropriate stakeholders to examine the feasibility of options that could see increased density on the site and lower parking ratios. 2, staff ensure the applicant achieve Tier 2 Toronto Green Development Standards, and notices of the public meeting and the community consultation be extended to the St. Andrews Community Association as well as the condo boards of the condo buildings located within Scarborough Centre at the developer's expense. Madam Chair, I've talked to both the applicant and the planning staff. As you know, we're undergoing a Scarborough Centre Transportation Master Plan. We're building a subway. We're reviewing our parking standards as we speak. So I want to make sure, and staff has said they're doing this anyway, but I just wanted to move the motion to make sure that staff actually talk to the applicant and have it out there as part of the public discussion, that we should be striving for a lower parking standard with the use of car share and other technologies. We don't have, in my opinion, we don't have to have the old standard. So that's number 1. Number 2 is just the Tier 2, which I do in every development application in my ward, which achieves a higher environmental standard and actually a lower operating cost for the building. And 3 is just extending the public notice. So I'll just move the staff recommendations plus those additional 3 recommendations.
Okay, and so on the amendment, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And item as amended, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Thank you. And the next one is SC 28.4, which is the Golden Mile Secondary Plan Study Status Report, and that's in Ward 35, my own Ward 35, and Councillor Thompson's ward, and we're going to receive this for information. So it's an information only. So we'll be moving that. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And SC 28.5, Scarborough Centre Focused Review Study, Councillors Thompson and DeBearmaker, and Councillor Thompson's not here, and I did have a chance to speak with him, so Councillor DeBearmaker?
I think I just move receipt.
Yeah,
I'll
it's just
move
receipt.
For information.
That's right. So all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Yeah. And SC 28.6, which is impact of tree roots on sidewalk conditions and maintenance. Councillor Karygiannis?
Hold, please.
Yeah. And SC 28.7, traffic control signals review, Eglinton Avenue East between Oswego Road and Barbados Boulevard. So this is on the border of Councillor DeBearmaker and my Ward 35. And Councillor DeBearmaker, you can.
Thank you. On behalf of yourself and myself, I'll move the following recommendation I think staff have, which is that City Council authorize the installation of the mid-block pedestrian traffic control signals 333 meters west of Barbados Boulevard. I'm the councillor on the north side of Eglinton, and I'm fully supportive. Yourself, Councillor Holland, on the south side are fully supportive. As our colleagues may know, there's a new French Catholic high school being built. It's sort of ramping up. I think it has about 100 or so students now, but in a couple of years it'll have 400 students as they finish the construction. There's also a Tim Hortons and a McDonald's beside the high school and on the north side of Eglinton. On the south side of Eglinton is a very large car dealership and a very large Barbados Boulevard, a lot of industrial units. So people going to work on the south side of Eglinton get off at the bus stop and run across 7 lanes of traffic to get to the south side. And people who are working on the south side run across 7 lanes of traffic to go to the Tim Hortons or McDonald's. It's a very unhealthy situation. We actually had another option, but staff have recommended that if council was to adopt it, this would be the best option. So I think both of us are happy with allowing a mid-block set of lights. I think we're going to consolidate the bus stops so that all the students who are getting off on the south side of Eglinton, who are going to the north side of Eglinton to go to high school, won't be running across 7 lanes of traffic. There'll actually be a traffic light, and they get off the bus and they cross at the lights. So I'll just move that recommendation.
Okay, so exactly, I'm fully supportive of Councillor Bearmaker's motion, and so all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And this one is SC 28.8, which is reopening of Scarborough Community Council item SC 25.13 entitled Standing Prohibition on Upton Road. And this requires 2/3 to reopen, and it's to move the staff recommendation. So it's to reopen first. Yeah, so it's reopened delegated item SC 25.13 entitled Standing Prohibitions Upton Road. It's with respect to recommendation 6 only. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And yeah, okay, so this is delete recommendation 6 of delegated item SC 25.13 and replace it with the following new recommendation 6. Prohibit standing at all times on the south side of Upton Road between the east end of Upton Road and a point 82 meters west. So this is just to rectify that problem that we've been having on Upton Road. All of those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And this is SC 28.9, which is speed limit review Queensbury Avenue. And this is Councillor Crawford's request to remove the word not from the staff recommendation. So it would be Scarborough Community Council reduce the speed limit from 40 kilometers to 30 kilometers on Queensbury Avenue between Kingston Road and Clonmore Drive. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And as amended? Opposed, and that carries.
Sunny Point. That's the street I want to live on. I want to live on Sunny. It's a nice place to live.
And the next one is SE 28.10, which is speed limit review, Sunny Point Crescent. And this is move staff recommendation. This is on behalf of Councillor Crawford. And so at Scarborough Community Council, reduce the speed limit from 50 to 30 kilometers on Sunny Point Crescent between Brooklawn Avenue and Eastville Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And SC 28.11, it's a turn prohibition on Clonmore Drive and Queensbury Avenue, and this is also in Councillor Crawford's ward. And he's requested me to move staff recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And SC 28.12, which is the heavy vehicles prohibition at Pharmacy Avenue and Ellesmere Road and Eglinton Avenue, or between Ellesmere Avenue and Eglinton Avenue, and this is to move staff recommendation on behalf of Councillor Thompson. Read that. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And SC 28.13, which is parking prohibition on Dolly Varden Boulevard and Bluefin Crescent. Councillor DeBeermaker?
Just move the staff recommendations.
Yep, okay, moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And then for SC 28.14, pedestrian crossover review of 33 Heather Road, we do have a deputation. Yep. Yes. We have a speaker. Yeah. Okay. And, yeah. And SC 28.15 is signalized pedestrian crossover PXO on Galloway Road at Coronation Drive. Councillor Ainsley?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Chair, I'm going to move the recommendations.
Yep, so moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Yes, yes, the councillor's recommendation. And the SC 28.16 school zone review, Dean Park Road. Councillor Hart?
Yes, Chair, staff have a minor technical amendment, if they could put it up.
Yes.
So this technical amendment addresses the no stopping, or the parking along Dean Park Road in a particular area that's adjacent to a path that crosses Dean Park Road from one side to the other, where where the students use it quite frequently. Unfortunately, the original report provides for 30-minute parking where that path is, and this amendment is to take away parking from that particular area, because there's fear when we looked at it that if people are parking right where the path is, the kids are running across Dean Park Road, that there could be safety issues there. So this amendment removes the parking from that particular area on the path on both sides.
Okay. And all those in favor of the amendment? Opposed, and that carries. And item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Great. And so that's the end of the, and there's two new items that we're adding for new business. And the first one is a request for city planning to prepare a technical amendment to bylaw 569-2013 to correct zoning error to the Aging Court community. Councillor Lee? That's a motion to introduce?
Yes, I do have a motion to introduce.
Yep, okay, all those,
This is recommended from the, from staff
yeah,
on the zoning bylaw.
yeah.
So can we put the recommendation up?
Okay, so just to add to new business?
Recommendation is to direct the Director of Community Planning, Scarborough District, in consultation with the Director of Zoning and Committee of Adjustments, to bring forward a statutory public meeting of Scarborough Community Council on April 4th.
Okay, so we'll first vote to add the item to new business.
Yes.
So all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And then Councillor Lee, you're moving this motion here. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed, and that carries. Great. And then Councillor DeBeermaker, you have the motion to introduce.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm asking leave to introduce a new item which would request a staff report regarding the feasibility of installing traffic calming measures on Bentley Drive.
Okay, and that's a motion to introduce new business. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries.
I'll just move the motion, Madam Chair. This is a request for staff to report back to the July 2018 Scarborough Community Council meeting, which is our last meeting of the term,
Yep.
on traffic calming measures to help reduce vehicle speeds on Bentley Drive, including curb extensions and raised concrete islands, as mentioned in Chapter 8 of the Street Design for Roadways of the Toronto Complete Streets Guidelines.
Great. And all those in favor? The motion, opposed, and that carries. Thank you. And we'll go back over to first SC 28.14 as we have a deputation. And so this is the pedestrian crossover review at 33 Heather Road. And the first deputant is Dwayne Kahn of Sir Alexander Mackenzie Parent Council. Okay, so just, sorry, 1 minute. Just before we do that, we're just going to reorder the paper, Councillor Lee, so that we can deal with this first.
Isn't this the last item?
No, Councillor Karygiannis is holding an item?
I'd like to move to reorder it so that we hear the speaker first,
Yes.
all right?
Okay.
Because the other one is just within the council itself.
Yes, okay, wonderful. All those in favor of reordering the order paper to, for SC 28.14? All those in favor, opposed, and that carries. Thank you. And so, Mr. Khan, you have 5 minutes to speak, and members of the Scarborough Community Council may ask you questions. And the clock is right there at the side.
Okay, thank you. Before I start, can I say that Johnny's is a good time? It's a good place.
Great.
Okay. So what we're trying to do, this has been a project in the works for 8 years, as I've come to find out, on Heather Road, Sir Alexander Mackenzie along the Catholic school. I've provided photos as well. This was the last email communication that I had with the city planners, and essentially their position is to do literally zero. They won't even put out a cone. They've personally come out, Al Burrows came out, and parents observed him getting into essential verbal disputes with parents because the street is just so crazy. I don't know if we can bring up my photos so you can see them. So the problem is outlined in my email that I provided up there. I don't know if you can see it clearly. I can't read it from here because I just gave my copy there. So I'll skip over everything else, and just to let you know, just a brief highlight of who I am. I've been involved with the school councils, parent councils. I'm a Canada 150 medal recipient for my work in education. I've been doing this for a long time, working with the kids and community and looking for where we need to improve things for their safety, especially the younger kids, right? So I'm just not here to waste everyone's time. What I'm really appalled at is what the city has put me in this position and yourselves to use up this time. I laid out very clearly what needed to be done. I went around, I spoke to the police, I've spoken to a significant amount of people to get support, so I understood the problem. And what the problems are is this. So the Heather Road, where are the photos? Oh, you're looking at them, some of them I see in front of me here. I thought they'd be up on the board, but that's okay. The problem is Heather Road is essentially a drag strip. If some of you know where Sir Alexander Mackenzie is, this is a perfectly straight street. It starts off with a church at the corner, then it has the Catholic middle school, then it has the public middle school, then it has the senior center bocce ball, and at the end of that street is the Aging Court Community Center, and at the other side of that street's another church, and right at the top of the T intersection is ACI, the high school. So that's part of the picture, looking at one direction. So look at how straight of a runway that is. Now, what you'll also see in that photo is the sidewalk is on the opposite side of where the community needs to use it. So the folks with strollers, young kids, seniors, anybody, they're on the side you're looking at, that's the residential side. The other side is where all of the facilities are, the schools, et cetera, et cetera. If you can please change that photo. So right there, I believe the city made a mistake originally when they built this. They set it up. You could see the intent. If you look at the little sidewalk piece closest to the front, it looks like a T right at the front. There's another photo that I have that's better than this. It goes right across the street. I had submitted quite a few photos. So I'll keep speaking while we look at that. Okay, that's great. That's literally from inside the school. So if you can see that sidewalk over there, that goes to another, that cuts through to the rest of the community. And that piece of sidewalk through the alleyway continues right on the other side of the street. And right where that sidewalk begins, the laneway, the alleyway, there's a post there. So that means that there's electricity there. You can stand there and see this was intentional. They meant for that to come right across to the school, and they set everything up. So somewhere along the lines, back in the day, somebody overlooked this. Now, moving along, we've gotten nothing done. I've tried to ask, right where you're looking at in front of the door, by the way, is where no cars are supposed to stop to allow the children to access and to cross there. But the signs that are posted there is as big as your tablet, and no one can see it. They're up high. It's very confusing. So we've asked the city, I wrote to them in very detail, and I said, look, the problem is you've created a situation where these kids and the elderly and everyone have no access to that. And remember, we're not talking about spring here. We're talking about they've got to deal with in winter. So this is completely unrealistic. And what you're not seeing on that street, as I said, you're looking at about, on any given time, there's the high school loans 1,000, the middle school's 400, the Catholic school's 400, the church is probably 300. So we're talking buildings that house thousands of people. And so moving on, the principal did her part, and they said no. And then later, so I asked for this.
Sorry, Mr. Khan, your time's up, but there may be other counselors that may ask you some questions.
I appreciate that. I was wondering if Mr. Lee can amend the motion to give me 2 more minutes to speak in conclusion,
Yeah, we
because we were waiting for the photos.
Quick question?
Sorry?
Question of the speaker.
Yes, he's going to ask you some questions.
Thank you.
Okay, you wanted to finish your statement, so go ahead
Yes.
and finish your statement.
Okay, thank you.
5 minutes to ask question you.
You have to ask a question.
So what is it that you wanted to say?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being accommodating. So the solutions is, I identified the problem. This is 8 years in the making, so I went back, and the solutions are this. I first started off for a lidded crosswalk. Other parents did, and we kind of found each other accidentally. So people have been asking, getting shut down by the city. And one woman had a detailed email that came to me, and they were very dismissive of her, and it was very rude. So the solutions are this. So I asked for a lidded crosswalk in front of the school. I asked for, then it moved on, because I spoke to some other of our officials, elected officials. And so, a safety zone designation, double the fine for infractions in the street, speed bumps if possible, better, larger signage for parking and stopping in front of the school, or at least a painted curb, something. The city's come back and said, well, we sent somebody out there in April. They sat in their car for 8 hours, which I've never seen. And they observed about 8 kids crossing. Oh, so you observed jaywalking and you did nothing to help them. So, and you're promoting that. So coming back to, so after all this was sent, they came back with, well, we're not going to do anything, that I've raised some new issues that they want to start with a traffic safety unit that they want to go out and reviews with the new items. Well, I said, hang on, why don't we start with the original premises? We need something now. Put a crosswalk in. If you do the other things, fantastic. The crosswalk actually serves a lot of purposes. It calms the traffic, because it creates a system for everyone to stop. But it really is atrocious, and I really appreciate this council voting to help the folks there. I mean, my kid's no longer there, so this is, in the higher level, is meaningless to me.
More questions of you. Can you wrap up what you want to say in 1 minute?
What I would like for the council to do is to vote and allow the lidded crosswalk to be put in place, to immediately get something in place. And if the city feels they want to be generous to us and put the other items in, that's fantastic, but at least having something is literally better than nothing. I've stepped out of my car to get people to stop and slow down. We've had so many near misses. So it's just, the principal will tell you this, it's a matter of when. We've had a lot of close calls. So that's my time, so I hope you can help me with this, and let's move forward and get something on the table. Thank you. Oh, sorry, one minor thing, for myself, my children are no longer there. So that for me, I can walk away and say, hey, I don't care, it's not my problem. But that's not what a community is about. So I want the other kids, and this should have been done a long time ago. So thank you for that.
Questions?
Yes.
When was this community built? Do you know? You have-
This community is built from, according to Father Foley, when this was set up, I think back in the 60s, that's why sidewalks are on one side. And he said they purposely put all the buildings on that, on the south side, because the railway is back there, and they put all the residents on the other side. But when they built it, the sidewalks went on the opposite side, and there's no way to get on that side, unless you...
And many of the other streets don't have sidewalks at all, right? On Heather, there's on the south side, but nothing on the north side. But if you go to Francis, Shilton, all these other streets, there are no sidewalks, correct?
There is on one side. It's the one side. Usually, yes, if I'm thinking off the top of my head, is no, there is none most, but there's at least one sidewalk on the streets, on the back streets. And what's important that you can't quite see there is the walkway goes over into the other neighborhood, which allows people to drop off in a circle. So it really does solve a lot of problems.
Have you, what is the speed limit on this street itself?
I think the speed limit is 40. That's not even clearly posted now that you raised that point.
Have you also checked out the placement of the speed signs on that street?
Mr. Burrows, Al Burrows came out, he looked at stuff, and as I said to you, the signage that's there of where to stop and not stop is literally as big as your tablet, and they're way up in the air, so people can't really see it. So to answer your question directly, no, there's improper signage there. I mean, there's something wrong when myself and other parents have to come out and stand in the street to get people to slow down. There's something fundamentally wrong.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the deputant? Yeah, Councillor Karygiannis.
Good morning, and thank you for coming. Certainly, children's safety is at the foremost top of everybody's agenda. The sidewalk on the north side, has the community asked for a sidewalk to be put in?
No, sir. I would look at that as, if this is the hurdles that I have to take on to go here, I can't see anyone else doing what you're doing. That would be more expensive. You are right. I do think that would be a much safer thing to put, because look at that. Look at the runway where all those buildings are.
What did staff tell you about children? I mean, you're concerned about the laneway, children coming from the north side, from the
That's right.
laneway to go to the school.
Yes,
And this is where you want a crosswalk put in.
yes.
Okay. How many children have staff counted using that laneway?
I looked at their report. They didn't quite count it that way. They counted it as they saw in 8 hours, 8 kids crossing for the day, which I find you're not looking at something here. Something doesn't make sense.
How many kids have you observed in the morning crossing and going up the laneway?
Okay, myself, I would have to say the laneway in the morning and the evenings, you're looking at about, there would be more, but at least about 20 each way. But the problem is parents don't let their kids out because they know how dangerous it is.
Most of the parents drive their kids to school?
They do, even literally from 2 streets over. I had a personal friend of mine who's no longer there. She would drive her son because she wouldn't let him off there. She tried it one time.
If I were to put it to you that most of the parents want to drive their kids to school because north of 401, we do have a lot of people that use cars, and a lot of parents in the city drive their kids to school. Helicopter parents, if you can call them as that.
Yes.
And they don't let their kids walk to school. Would you disagree with me?
It's an accurate statement, but not in that community, because you could see how that was built. Because literally, once you cross over that street, the whole community opens. You can see the intentions of why they built everything the way they did. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see it.
Would you be more in view and more supportive of a crosswalk, or let's say calming traffic devices like speed bumps? I mean, people usually, when you got a crosswalk, a lot of people just don't pay attention to it. I mean, even if you put the yellow lights on and the amber flashing lights, I mean, if you want to slow somebody down, you put a speed bump. In my estimate, what would you be in favor of?
I'm in favor of the crosswalk. I do support the speed bumps, but I could see that being a hurdle. It's taking me 8 years to get here. They're going to say, well, we need to have a snow traffic study to see how the speed bumps impact the plows. Let's just get something now.
Have you consulted your counselor about the speed bumps? Have you consulted staff to see how speed bumps work and what's the hurdles you have to put up?
Councilor Karygiannis, I gave them 5 solutions, and they came back with, well, we're going to need to do another study. on my new solutions. They've had 8 years, Councilor Carey Janis. So we need something.
We're talking 20 kids crossing.
No, there would be more. I can't count. I'm not there in the evenings after 3:30 to see the old folks and the parents that go to the church and to bocce ball and to the tennis courts. I'm not there to sit there and monitor that. I'm just telling you from in the morning, it's crazy. I'm just telling you for myself and living in that community, there's nothing there. You want to push a stroller, where are you pushing it? You're an old person with a walker, where are you going?
You will need a sidewalk on the north side of the street. I think that's where you start.
But you can't, for now, you can't get there. People are reasonable in the community. We don't want to waste money. Folks are reasonable in where they've got to go. So at least help me get started with something, and I do appreciate your support for a sidewalk if that's what you want to go with. But I'm going to go with what will work right away, the greatest impact. Because this is going to be a paralysis through analysis.
All right, sir, thank you.
Any other questions of the deputant? No, seeing none. I just have a few questions, sir.
Yes, Madam
So,
Chair.
as you know, in Scarborough, there's so many, when Scarborough was built.
Yes.
After World War II, and you probably know the history of it and how it was formed. So a lot of the communities were built without sidewalks.
Sure.
All over Scarborough. They're in my ward and everybody's ward. So that's historical. Do you know if the residents on the street have requested a sidewalk historically?
I do not know that information. That community is now changed. It's a large portion Mandarin speaking, so English isn't really their first language, so they struggle with that. No one wants to quote-unquote cause trouble with the city.
But do you know if, because a lot of people, I'm just saying, from my experience, a lot of residents don't want the sidewalk in front of their house because then they have to clear the snow and then they have to maintain that. So have you spoken with them or tried to get a translator or spoken with the counselor about the sidewalk? I'm only saying that because if other streets do not have the sidewalk, the reason why that side never had a sidewalk was because they wouldn't put it in front of a house. Because of that reason, because it's more maintenance on behalf of the homeowner. So do you know that to be a fact, or are people requesting a sidewalk?
I can answer both questions. One, on the other streets north of that area, when you go through, there are sidewalks. Dennett has a sidewalk on it, so there are sidewalks. This particular street, no, because that was not the purpose and scope of my project here, was to put in a sidewalk. My goal is to, and the school's goal is to get a crosswalk that was obviously laid out there to get that going. So I'm here to advocate strictly on I know everyone's looking forward to the bigger picture, and it's awesome to see that. But I want to leave here today with something that has been 8 years in the making, and we're getting shut down. If we can't get a simple crosswalk, Madam Chair, what hopes do those folks have to get the expensive sidewalk in there? So I'm going to start with, I want a crosswalk. We want a crosswalk.
Right, and so are they continuing to ask for a sidewalk?
No, nobody has. I don't know if anybody has. I don't think people know they can ask for that, to be honest.
Have you gone around and asked has Councillor Lee provided you with a petition, or have you had a petition or gone door to door requesting for a sidewalk?
No, Madam Chair, but I can take that away and aim to do that.
Yeah, I mean, generally, it's very helpful when any counselor gets a petition, because then we can see that there's more than one person requesting it. So that's why I'm asking you if you're aware of it or not.
Thank you, Bastion, but remind me, a petition, I did submit that document. I don't know if you have it up there. The petition with all the names, with everyone there for the crosswalk,
Right.
that is there, the page that the booklet that the city gave out. I
Right.
believe it's over 50 or so, or whatever the number is on that page.
How many is there?
I have our MP
15?
or I have our MP or MPP, city councilor, both principals. In fact, the new principal, Mr. Chubb at the Catholic school, this is his first year there, he stepped out and he's like, Dwayne, what is going on here? This is insane. He goes, I'm new here and this is what you guys put up with. The police have said people use that as a bypass to shepherd because their devices say, hey, this is the shortest path. So I understand the sidewalk. That's not why I'm here, and that's why we're not here. We just need something. So I'm going to ask you to vote on a lidded crosswalk to start with, and then we can proceed from there.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions of the deputy?
Anyone else?
No, thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the council. Thank you for assisting in the community.
Thanks. And so now we'll go over to staff, and Mr. Ononen, you may have some drawings that you could present and findings on behalf of staff's report.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Here's the map from the report that shows the location of our study. We had been asked to conduct a pedestrian crossover review at this location where there's a walkway that is opposite the school, the public school. And too bad the light, it looks like it's burned down on the table here. So essentially, we studied that location. We determined that the warrants were not met for a pedestrian crossover. And in terms of pedestrian volumes, it was studied on Monday, April 3rd, 2017. Thank you. And we counted 3 unassisted children, 4 assisted children, and then 82 youths and adults crossing in an 8-hour period on that date for a total pedestrian volume of 89 pedestrians. So it does not meet the warrants that are stipulated for pedestrian crossing protection in the form of a pedestrian crossover. And so we are not recommending installation. However, should this location be warranted in the future, then this would be a suitable location for a pedestrian crossover.
And questions of staff? Yep, Councillor Shan, and then Councillor Karagianis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can you point to me where exactly the crosswalk would be? Where, if there,
Thank you.
and is one side of the street for that, one side of, I'm understanding that one side does not have a sidewalk, right?
Yes, correct. The south side has a sidewalk where the schools are, and the north side does not have a sidewalk.
So how does crossing, I'm just, because I'm new and been here, how does sidewalks, how does crossing without having sidewalk on one of the sides work? Because, you know, it gives an indication that you can walk on both sides to be safe to cross, and from through the walkway. So this is only meant kind of people coming through the walkway rather than encouraging people to walk on the side of the place, which is not necessarily for sidewalks.
Through you, Madam Chair, there is a walkway here, and then that would be sort of the north side of a hypothetical pedestrian crossover, or one to be approved here. So it would, such a crossover would attract traffic to and from that walkway that heads further north into the community.
Would this anyway increase the amount of people walking on the north side where the sidewalks is not there because we've installed this? Like, I'm just trying to see by design how that safety concern would be taken care of. Like, for example, when you have an option to cross at some point, people tend to walk along to cross, and then
I would imagine that if a pedestrian crossover were installed at this location, it might induce more pedestrians to cross to use the walkway, but I don't know if it would encourage people to start walking on the north side of the street. I think it'd be more of a source or a sink for that walkway to have potentially more pedestrians.
thank you.
And Councillor Karagianis?
Thank you. Through the chair to the staff, how many households would that walkway approximately service?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm guessing that based on the key map here, that it could potentially service all of the community up here, especially if there are students in those homes that use these 2 schools. So it could be hundreds of homes.
How many children did you say cross the walkway in order to get to the school?
During our study on Monday, April 3rd, 2017, we only observed 7 students crossing at that location where the pathway ends at Heather.
So that walkway leads to Heather Crescent and to Dennett Road above. So basically, if I'm not incorrect, there will be the close, the Dennett Road and some into Merridon, Laura Lynn, Moran, and Shilton Road that we usually will cross that, I mean, come down that road in order to go for the kids to go down the walkway. Would I be correct? Like, I mean, that would be 50 or 60 homes altogether. I mean, according to, I'm not sure if we have this map, maybe we can put it on.
Everybody has it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
at the back of the motion that I deal with.
If you find time and hold chair, please,
Yes.
when the map was up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the map.
Through the chair to staff, would I be incorrect to sort of say that the walkway captures the south side of, the north side of Dennett, from Shilton to Merridon, and a few of the houses in the in-streets, and probably part of Francis Crescent? That's the only thing that the walkway serves for the children to go to school there. So we could be looking at about roughly 30 to 40 homes.
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, now, in that focused way, though that block here would serve that walkway, at this time, we only measured 7 children using the walkway.
I mean, I can't see parents living at Glen Watford Drive in Montgomery, using the walkway, coming along Montgomery, going down Laura Lynn in order to use the walkway for the kids to go to school. So, I mean, you counted 7. I would give the deputy on the benefit of the doubt, let's say 20. I don't think there'll be more than 20 kids that would use that crosswalk to go to school. Would I be incorrect in that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can only talk to our account and to say that there were 7 students crossing, and on any given day that could fluctuate, plus or minus, and
When was an older study done on this? Has there been a study before done on this?
I believe we had done a study in 2010, and back then there were fewer pedestrians, I believe.
So a walkway the walkway and the crossing would primarily service to one school, or will encourage students to go to use, for students from the other schools also to use it? Because if my kid were to go to the school, I'm not sure if it's the separate school or besides St. Bartholomew, I would use Shilton Road versus the walkway. So I think the walkway will only serve for one school. I mean, the children of the cross, were they only particularly going to that school right at the walkway?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would say that that walkway could attract, that if there was a pedestrian crossover there, it would attract people to cross to the south sidewalk, and that sidewalk serves primarily the public school, but it could serve the Catholic school and provide another option for pedestrians and school children to go to the Catholic school. And
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Lee?
What's the speed limit on this road?
through you, Madam Chair, Heather Road has a speed limit of 40 kilometers per hour.
40 kilometers. Have you checked the placement of the speed signs? Where they are placed?
I haven't personally checked the placement of the speed signs. We are assuming that they're in the correct places, but that is certainly something that could be done as a follow-on.
Because if you look on Google Map, there's one sign at there's one sign at the west end. One sign at the west end for travelers or for drivers going eastbound, and there's one sign going westbound, and it's right in front of the school, Sam's. So, and when Councillor Kerry Jens was asking about the catchment area, I would suggest that, from Laurelin and all the other streets that is north of it, because it's a middle school, okay? The elementary school is at the top of the rectangle, right at the North Asian Court, where the cul-de-sac is. So then, yes, right, that's the elementary school. The middle school is the one that, there's a large catchment area. It's not only for this area, but for many other areas, because it's a middle school. Because Mr. Khan lives actually north of that, okay, north of Huntingwood. So they would use the sidewalk to come all the way down. So the catchment area is much larger than what was suggested by Councilor Karagianis. Is that right? Would you agree with that? Because it's a middle school.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would say that certainly middle schools have a larger catchment area than public schools, and that the students from all over that neighborhood are likely attending that school.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of staff? No, see none. Okay, so I'll just ask a few questions. Mr. Wanan, so I'm just trying to get clarification on what exactly the issue is, if it's it's a crossing at this particular location for the school, or is it the church, or is it both? Or is it the walkway and getting across the walkway to the other side where on the sidewalk side? Is that what your understanding is?
My understanding is that this is an issue about connecting the walkway to the public school primarily, even though there could be some secondary issues in terms of other uses on the south side of the street, including the Catholic school and other uses. But I think primarily the reason and the trigger for this report were concerns about providing a crossing protection between the public school and the walkway.
Okay, and I saw the traffic study that was done, and you said that was done on April 3rd. And what meets the warrant, if you could explain that a little bit more?
Yes, so we had measured 89 pedestrians, and the pedestrian crossing protection warrant would normally require about 200 pedestrians. But in this case, the traffic volumes were so low that actually any number of pedestrians would not trigger the pedestrian crossing protection warrant.
And so the pedestrian volume, sorry, the traffic volume is, what is the traffic volume?
In our study, we had measured about 1,200 vehicles over an 8-hour period.
Okay, and sorry, what would meet the warrant?
In order to justify the crossing protection warrant, there need to be about 1,800 vehicles in an 8-hour period.
Okay, thank you. And, yes?
One question, if I may.
Sure. We'll, I have to ask for a second round.
Okay, so we have a second round, and I need one question.
Yes, so all those in favor of a second round? Opposed, and that carries. And Councillor Karagianis?
Is that, thank you, through the chair to staff, is that walkway maintained in the winter?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is a public walkway, so I am assuming it's under the jurisdiction of the city and transportation services, and as such, I'm assuming that it is maintained in the winter.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you. And so that concludes the questions to staff, and now to speak. Yep, so Councillor Lee first.
I'll speak from there.
Okay.
Want that back?
Yeah. I'm gonna put this up. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move a couple of motions. Number one, is to amend the recommendation, staff recommendation, by removing the word "not." So now they reads that Scarborough Community Council authorized installation of a pedestrian crosswalk at Heather Road at a point 175 meters west of Shilton Road. And that's connecting the school, the south side to the north side where the walkway is, and going north. As I mentioned in my question, it's a middle school, so it's got a much larger catchment area. And when this community was built, long ago, many of the streets don't have sidewalks. Okay, only on the collector roads such as Heather, there is a sidewalk on one side of the road. But on most of the streets, even on collector roads, there's only a sidewalk on one side of the street. That's what the old standards were. But now we are implementing Vision Zero, which makes our streets safer. So we have to start considering. In fact, I am going to be asking for a review of all these old areas where there are no sidewalks on the street, because people are walking on the street. In fact, 2 years ago, there was a sidewalk installed on one side of Moran, this street here, because of the elementary school here. And I went and canvassed the area, and I would say that only about 40% of people were home or answered the door. And and most of the responses I got was just, please go ahead and install it. There were a couple of people that were hesitant about installing a sidewalk. But after it was installed, I got very angry residents telling me that, how dare you install a sidewalk there? It removes parking for for me, right? So, but my explanation is for the safety of the kids, so we need to install it. And no different than why I'm asking you for this, and also actually a placement, the second part of my motion was placement of speed signs, because when you look at the street, there's one sign in front of the Sam School, which is right in the middle of the road. I mean, the whole distance of the street. Whereas when you're entering the Heather from Brimley, you don't have an idea that the speed limit is 40. Okay, so you could be traveling at 50, at 60, because at the end where Glen Watford is, the community center, it's a there's ice arena, there's a swimming pool, so people do use rural and also Heather to get to that community center, and also Glen Watford. So those are the three main roads people use to get to the community center. So there is heavy traffic. The swimming pool was put in after the community was built. So there is a lot more people using Heather Road. And I'm not sure whether you know or not, but nowadays people do drive their kids to school, much more than they used to in the past. In the past, there used to be one car per family. And if the breadwinner in the household goes to work, there's no car, everybody walks. But now a lot more people do drive. So that's why I'm moving those two recommendations to review and place more speed signs, as well as to put a crosswalk in. Now, somebody suggested putting walkways. I am asking for a review of the older areas through PWIC committee. Okay, so just as we did in Lawrence Park, whereby it's an older neighborhood, and the review of the area was warranted to ensure that we have safer streets for the pedestrians. I'd like to have us vote on these two recommendations separately, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. And then questions of the mover? Councillor Karygiannis, yep.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Councillor Lee, yeah.
The middle school, is it a Toronto District School Board, or is it Toronto Separate District School Board?
The middle school is a public school. Okay, and actually I forgot to mention, right beside this is a Catholic primary school, St. Bartholomew. So there are students in that, I think roughly about 250 students in that school.
Have you requested sidewalks to be put on Heather?
Not at this point, because when I first became a councillor, I had asked about sidewalks in some areas, but not this particular area. I was told that Toronto Water and so on, because it requires various departments to work together to put sidewalks in. It's not that easy, and it's not, well, the same arguments I got that were given to the deputant here. Is
have
that
not
it's not in the budget.
You have not requested sidewalks, correct?
I haven't requested sidewalks for this area, but the cost of a sidewalk in this area would be, on that street alone, would be about 100 to 150,000.
But
And the
we do
cost
have
of a
a
sidewalk, crosswalk,
separate budget that
I
we
would
have.
say there's about 30 to 40,000.
So the pushback that you got from the residents when you were canvassing the sidewalks, just for clarification, was because people didn't want to use the pushback that you got from the residents, just to clarify the motion, was that people didn't want to use their driveway.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, this is only going to serve, what do you foresee this serving? Francis, Dennett, do you foresee this sidewalk, I mean, this crosswalk serving many more streets besides those two streets? Like
Yeah.
Dennett and Francis?
Before you request sidewalks, you need to get community also support putting them in. Okay, so
Councillor,
my you know,
My
like
question to you is the walkway.
my take on the community is that in many cases, many people do not want to see the
Counselor,
changes.
my question was, the crosswalk would serve, and that services the walkway, would only service, in my estimation, Francis and Dennett. Would I be incorrect?
I didn't quite catch the last part.
My summation,
Yes.
and my question to you is that for us to put a crosswalk there, that would only serve the streets of Francis and Dennett.
Not true, because the walkway here leads into the greater community in here. So all the houses along here, and as I mentioned to you, is because it's middle school, it serves a larger catchment area. Students from north of Huntingwood can also use a crosswalk on Huntingwood, walk through the park,
Counselor, my question
and
was
walk
not
through
about
here.
Huntingwood. My question was about the walkway on Heather.
The
Would I be
walkway on Heather,
incorrect- Would I be incorrect to put
which walkway are you talking about?
walkway that you want, I mean, I'm talking about the crosswalk that you want to put right now
Yes.
on that walkway,
Yes,
on Dennett, sorry, on Heather.
on Heather, yes.
Right, where you got your pencil? Would I be incorrect to summarize that the pedestrian would only service the people on Francis and Dennett?
Not true. Because all those houses in here, if they have kids going to the middle school, can walk through the walkway to get there, rather than walk around.
Thank you, but you know and I know that the parents from the top side, let's say Todd Road and that particular community, they will drive their kids to school. They wouldn't let them walk.
Well, we are trying to encourage people kids to walk, okay? So if we encourage them, we better be able to give them.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. And other questions of the mover? Nope, seeing none. Thank you, Councillor Lee. And then over to Councillor de Beermaker. Yes. Sorry, we're on speaking now, so. And-
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm going to support the local councillor in terms of getting this crosswalk. Certainly, when I worked before I was elected, I worked as an assistant to Councillor Doug Mahood, who represented this area. He happened to live on Glen Watford. His parents lived on Stubbswood, so I was always up and down that street. I played hockey at Glen Watford Arena. In the 9 years that I worked there as an executive assistant, nobody ever asked us for a crosswalk, but that was almost 30 years ago now. Times are changing. People have GPS systems. So before, and I don't think any of us would be the people who are cutting through subdivisions and speeding past schools, but we all know there are. And people now, when they're getting stuck at Shepherd and Brimley, because it's a very busy intersection, they look at their computer, it's right on their dashboard, and they go, oh, I can cut through the subdivision and get over to Midland Avenue and avoid all the chaos of Shepherd Avenue, and they zip down those streets really fast. So I think when the local community, and you have a petition, you have the local councillor saying, it is my opinion that this crosswalk will increase the safety of the students and the people living on this area, I'm going to support them. I think the deputants use the phrase, there's something fundamentally wrong. And I think I agree with that. I don't necessarily think that it's the way the street is designed. I don't think it's because there's not a sidewalk on the north side of the street. I think it's because of human beings. This problem isn't unique to this school. Every single one of us, I'll speak for myself. In my ward, every single school has this problem. I have schools that front on Bremerton, and Bremerton people are traveling at 70 kilometers an hour. They're flying along Bremerton to avoid Ellesmere. Why? Because it's a known side street and their GPS tells them they can do it. They triple park in front of the schools, and often the people who are the most dangerous are the parents of the local school. So I would say to the deputant and to all of us, it's not rocket science. When he got out of his car to try to slow people down, my guess is it was probably one of his neighbors. Maybe it wasn't, but certainly in almost every school I have, we have an issue that when children used to be able to walk across the street, when I'll call it most of us were young, it wasn't an issue. Today, it's an issue because people, other parents with their own children in their own SUVs are speeding down the road to try to sneak into the parking lot before somebody else does. So I think while the volume of students crossing the street isn't high, I don't want the parents and the counselor to come back to us in a year or two from now, as we have at other more busy intersections, we say, we asked for help, you didn't give us help, now somebody's dead. I think it's not too much for the local counselor to ask for a simple crosswalk in front of a school that goes to a pathway. If it makes that community a little teeny weeny bit safer, it's a teeny weeny good thing that we've done to make Scarborough better. So I'll just simply support the local councillor. And in terms of sidewalks, we all know I don't have to go out and survey those residents on that street and ask them, do you want a sidewalk built on your front lawn? They're all going to say no, or the vast majority will say no because it interferes with their parking. They then have a moral obligation to shovel the sidewalk in the winter. They have people walking closer to their houses. They may have planted shrubs and garden beds, which is technically on a right-of-way. So I don't think the solution here is to build another sidewalk. Leave it alone. It's been there for 60 years. Just give the kids a crosswalk. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor DeBriaker. And others to speak? Councillor Karygiannis and then Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I am inclined to support the motion put forward by Councillor Chin Lee. I don't care if it's 1 child, 5 children, or 10 children. If we'll provide security for those people crossing the street, so be it. Let's bear it. But I think that the councillor also has another motion that he wants the whole area re-looked at, and I think that that area is an area which is 60 years old, and it needs to, plus, I would say, and it needs to have a second look at it. So I'll be supporting both his motions, and I encourage others to do the same.
Thank you. And Councillor Shan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I used to be a school board trustee for that area, and I know the real challenges. And as Councillor DeBriaker mentioned, every school, literally every school has a problem with safety concerns, and it's a combination of 3 things. I'll go to the hardest one maybe is the parent behavior. And, in many of these schools, it's probably the 10, 20 parents that come and do those 3-point turns and, park the car right in the middle of the street to drop the kid. And there seems to be some sort of an isolation between what happens inside the school and what happens on the street. I think the parents need to know the street is part of the school community, and how you behave there impacts on how the children get their education. And I think this connect has to be made, and that'll take a lot of education and enforcement, and maybe, some parents being called to the principal's office rather than the students. But having said that, the second area is the enforcement piece. We don't have enough police officers. I'm not advocating for increased police budget, but enough time police officers to be there in a community safety patrolling kind of way, in which we get occasional ticketing right at the starting of the school year, and then that's it. I think we need a little bit more presence in either direct policing or in terms of community policing kind of way. But what is in our control is the design, the third piece. And I think every place where we see problems in the school, there's a design fault, whether it be in terms of how the school was designed for 600 kids without having a way for them to drop off. The elementary schools in my area, a couple of them have more than 600 kids and very few spots. We say no parking on the street, no parking on the sideways, and it is very difficult. So I think we have to not let the community go and collect petitions and come back with, and then we ask them about solutions when they should only be telling us problems, because they're not there to provide the technical solution. It's our responsibility. So I think that at some point we have to figure out a way that we do this kind of a full project of looking at school safety ourselves, school by school, and coming up with ways. And maybe it's a big investment at one point to make everything safe, because I feel like some parents are more active and they're able to advocate. Some communities, they're not as active, language barriers, socioeconomics, and other things. So they may not get enough petition, or they may not have enough sway over the councillors to do this. So I'm supportive of this, because I think at any given point, safety of one child is more important than the cost of the sidewalk. But I do think that at some point we have to figure out as a council to look at school safety ourselves, rather than having parents go out and sign petition, look at solutions, convincing neighbors and other things as well. So if the neighbors, some of them may not like it, may be the case, but we might still have to do it because it is important for the safety of the children. Thank you.
Thank you. And others to speak? Okay. And I'll just speak really quickly in support as well. And thank you, the deputant, for all the work that you've done on behalf of the school, and working with when your kids were there at the school, and coming forward today with that. And hopefully we'll vote today and move forward with more protection and safety in the community. So I'll just reiterate what was said here. We all deal with these issues within our community. There's a historical built form with many of the neighborhoods without sidewalks. So that was the historical design of many of the neighborhoods in Scarborough, and it's been problematic in implementing them because many of the neighbors don't want sidewalks. So then we are left to other design and other functions to come in and provide safety. So in this regard, I'm going to support the PXO. I would also recommend that the councillor, when you're looking at this and when you're reviewing it, to also look at, I know we've dealt with many of them in my neighborhood. When you do bring in a PXO, you should also bring in the speed bumps, because the problem with the PXO is that most people don't notice it. And that's why there is actually fatalities at PXOs. So that's why I've not been a huge fan of them, and I've worked really closely with my community to educate them on why you also need to implement speed bumps when you're doing PXOs. So I'll support it, but I think that you should look at that as well. And it's just the historical design form of when the communities were built and the schools were built, and the types of vehicles that were used and are still in use. So I'll be supporting the motion, and we'll go to vote. All those in favor of the motion? Recorded vote. And so it's Councillor DeMaremaker, Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Holland, Councillor Lee, Councillor Karagianis, Councillor Shan, Councillor Hart, and Councillor Kelly. So it's unanimous, and that passes. And it's, is it as amended? Yep, and so we'll do item as amended. All those in favor, and we'll do recorded vote on that as well. Councillor DeBearmaker, Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Holland, Councillor Lee, Councillor Karagianis, Councillor Shan, Councillor Hart, and Councillor Kelly. Thank you, and so that passes. Thank you, and then moving on to the final item today, which is number 6. And Councillor Karagianis, you held this item.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to ask questions of staff, please.
Yes, so do we have staff here? Oh, yeah.
Madam Chair, I can
Thank you.
answer some of the questions related to transportation.
Okay, great. So we have transportation here. Mr. Curry, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, through you to staff. The original request that we had put forward was to come back with a figure of what it costed the city to look after the heaves on the street, be it legal costs, be it payouts that they do for people that sue the city, and the maintenance of these heaps. Have we got that figure?
Through you, Madam Chair, so I was able to get some information from our Claims and Risks Department, and what I can advise is between January 1st, 2012 to December 31st, 2017, in the Scarborough District, there was 21 suits laid against the city in regards to sidewalk-related disrepair.
And they cost it in payouts and
Well,
legal staff?
so far, 2 of the 21 suits have been settled for approximately $108,000. 19 of the suits are still pending.
So we're looking roughly about $50,000 per lawsuit. The $108,000, was it a payout, or was it also legal staff?
That was the settlement. It does not include the legal costs associated.
Okay, through the chair to the legal department, what did it cost us in the legal representation? What has the tally been on these 21 legal suits up to now?
I don't know, sir. It's not information we have. There was some information obtained from our claims department. They're the ones who collect that. Our legal department doesn't keep statistics of that nature, but I can tell you that if they were settled, it's possible that there were quite limited costs from legal's perspective, because maybe there weren't, I don't know, but there may not have been advanced
All right,
proceedings.
let me rephrase the question. How many hours do you put on a legal suit? How many hours legal department staff, how many hours?
Again, it varies widely. A lot of our claims are settled through the claims department. They never come to legal. For ones that are disputed, it can be many, many hours if we go to something like a trial. Many are far, far less, and it depends at what stage it goes through. There's no average.
Do we farm this work out to an outside, to an insurance company, and they provide their own legal, or does the city legal team makes the representations?
There's a wide variety of different formats. Generally speaking, the legal department tries to keep in a lot of its work through our staff, and the litigation department has grown, but there's still a lot of work that gets farmed out to other law firms.
How much money have we paid in Scarborough for the 21 lawsuits that we have farmed out to other firms?
I don't know if they've been farmed out. I don't even know if all of them have been referred to legal, but I don't have that number.
Okay, Madam Chair, I do have a problem here. I mean, the request was specific, and I'm going to go back to staff and say the request was specific. What has it costed us in legal fees, in payout fees, and all that stuff? And I'm not getting the answers of what it has costed us to farm this out to other legal firms. Why didn't staff provide that information? I'm not trying to be belligerent here, but the request was specific.
Through you, Madam Chair, we're certainly happy to do further work. There is a limit to what legal does tally in this respect, but unfortunately, the request that came through in the final recommendation didn't include that level of detail. So we're happy to come back with that. I understand you expected to have it.
Now,
It's not something I have.
Let me understand this. Didn't the request say the cost? Isn't the cost part of the legal fees? Isn't the cost part of like your hours that you put in, the hours that were put in by other firms? Isn't that part of the cost?
Through you, Madam Chair, the request that we ended up having, for whatever reason, really focused on the extent of the damage caused by the trees rather than the legal costs. Again, we're happy to report back on that to the extent that we have that information.
Well, I mean, with all request to staff and all respect to staff, I think that we need to get the bigger picture, because when you pay out $108,000, there's a lot of work that goes in. You have to get a mediator, you have to get legal staff to go to, you have to go to discovery. Am I incorrect in this?
Again, it entirely depends on the suit. As I said, a large number of our claims never get to that level. They're handled by the insurer and settled in that manner. And I don't have the specifics on these. That's a very large percentage of the claims.
Do we
against
know
us.
how much money do we had to pay extra, an increase in insurance because of these lawsuits?
No.
Okay.
And as far as I understand, the city underwrites its own insurance policy, so I don't think individual lawsuits tally in that manner in terms of
Thank
that
you.
cost.
Great, thank you. And Councillor Hart.
Just for clarification, that was 21 slip and falls on sidewalks over a 5-year period in Scarborough, is that right?
Through you, Madam Chair, 21 claims relating to sidewalk disrepair, so most likely they would have been trips
Right.
in the vicinity of trees, or it could have been an icy condition. They're not specific, but about 45% of our Sidewalk repairs are in the vicinity of trees, so potentially 45% of that 21 are in the vicinity of
And
trees.
that's over a 5-year period, correct? And only 2 at this point in time have been settled. The other 19 may or may not be, city may or may not be at fault, correct?
That's right, they're still litigating those.
So over a 5-year period, I mean, I was involved in claims for a number of years, quite a while ago. And over a 5-year period, that seems like a fairly low number, fairly low-risk item relative to slip and falls, which I know in the wintertime come into the city in droves. Seems low.
Relative to slips and falls related to winter,
Yeah.
the number is
Right.
low.
So relative to overall city risk, this is a low item, in my opinion, anyway. You don't have to answer that. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. And Councillor DeBeermaker?
Through you, Madam Chair, I guess to transportation staff, if you could remind me, say the average cost to fix, I think we call a sidewalk slab, or do we call it a bay? So if you were to fix on a street where there was a problem and a tripping hazard, what does it cost per bay or per 10 bays?
The average cost is approximately $1,000, and we generally will replace 3 bays so that we can provide a transition through the area. Particularly if there's a heave, it's important that the entire sidewalk be level.
And through Madam Chair, so it's $3,000 minimum, I'd say, per repair.
So $1,000 per repair.
$1,000 per bay.
Yeah, no, for 3 bays. So
Oh, sorry,
if a
$1,000
repair
for
will
3
include
bays,
3
okay.
yes.
So again, if your staff, and I know you have, I think summer students go out and measure, check all the sidewalks, but if somebody like me complains that in front of my house there's a tripping hazard, staff come out and say, yes, the homeowner's correct, there's a tripping hazard for whatever reasons, we fix it, and it's gonna be $1,000, could be $2,000 if we have to do more, but $1,000 be pretty reasonable.
That's correct, Counselor, and we would make it safe with some type of ramping padding in the interim until we could get to the permanent repair.
And what's your, say for Scarborough, what's your average annual budget to do these type of sidewalk repairs?
The budget's $2.4 million out of the capital budget for sidewalk repairs.
So every year across Scarborough, from Steeles down to the lake, but our department is investing $2.5 million to fix repairs,
That's correct.
make it safer for pedestrians.
That's correct.
Do we have a backlog of repairs waiting to be done?
We do, Counselor. Currently, the backlog is in the neighborhood of 5,000 locations for the years 2016 and 2017. The current budget allows for approximately 30% of the annual permanent repairs to be completed.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand those numbers. There's a backlog, we'll call it, of about 5,000 locations waiting to be repaired.
That's correct.
So your staff, if you will, have identified there are 5,000 spots at least in Scarborough where we know there is there is a potential tripping hazard. And so in 2018, this year that budget we've just passed, roughly how many do you think you'll repair?
Approximately 30% of that 5,300.
30%, about 2,000 of them?
Approximately 2,000.
2,000. And that's with $2.4 million. Knowing that we may get sued for some of them, whatever the number may be, and knowing that, of course, we just don't want people to trip anyway, whether they break a wrist or an elbow or lose their teeth or get a black eye, none of us wants that for any of our families or friends that are walking to the bus stop. Have you done an analysis to say if we were given a one-time or two-time increase in funding, we could catch up with that backlog and minimize the risk? Or looking at the legal problems that may arise, that it's cheaper to be preventive and say maybe less money in legal payouts if we actually invested an extra, well, let's call it an extra $2.5 million, would eliminate your backlog pretty much in Scarborough?
We haven't done that analysis, Councillor, but we would look probably at a lift of approximately $5 million on top of the annual to address the backlog over the period of 1 to 2 years.
So we need about an additional, I'll call it one time, if you will, funding just to eliminate the backlog. We always still have sidewalks heaving every winter, but at least I would call it, maybe you'd feel more comfortable at night going to bed knowing that we have a safer pedestrian environment in Scarborough.
So the increase of $5 million would help to go towards that backlog, Councillor, for sure.
And of course, that's Scarborough. I would say maybe it's similar amounts in North York downtown and Etobicoke.
Probably more in Scarborough, North York, and Etobicoke. The types of sidewalks are different in the downtown core, and the presence of trees and things are a little different. So not, I wouldn't say it's equal, but similar.
So if we just took three of them, so we're looking at a ballpark cost of maybe $15 million, if we were as council to say that we don't want our friends and family tripping on these hazards. To catch you up, we would probably need to allocate the Transportation Department an additional $15 million just to wipe out that backlog.
I think that number's somewhat accurate. It could be a little higher than that, but in that area.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? No, okay, seeing none, then to speak. Councillor.
I've got a motion and I'm not sure.
Sure. It might, if it's not ready, does anybody else want to speak to this? Yep, Councillor Hart.
I think all of us have these issues in all of our wards and citywide, and we've all experienced it. I think what you really need to look at, though, is a long-term solution. I mean, putting $15 million at it is an idea for sure. It will catch you up, but over a few years, you'll be back to square one again. So you need two things, I think. You need, one, sustainable funding and come through the budget process with that. But also on the bottom of page 3 and top of page 4, you have a list of things, of measures that you say would help. And I would suggest, I didn't ask this question, but I would suggest that perhaps those measures should be costed and submitted as part of your 2019 budget submission as well, if those things would eradicate some of these problems long-term.
Okay, great, thank you. And Councillor DeBoermaker.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair, I appreciate that this report is here, and I'm perhaps not focusing so much on the trees because we know that it's, in my opinion, it's not really the issue. The majority of tripping hazards are not even around trees. They're not close to trees. Over 50% of the hazards are not around trees. And the tripping hazards that are around trees really aren't caused by the trees in the majority of cases. So you're looking at 80% of the tripping hazards have nothing to do with trees. So I certainly don't think there's a need to go out with chainsaws and start removing trees in the false belief that maybe it would make our friends and family safer. That just, it's not going to happen, and I don't think it would work, because even if we chop down every tree in the city of Toronto, people would still be tripping on sidewalks, because you can go across a Walmart parking lot where the city sidewalk is, and it'll be uneven for whatever reasons, because we have winter. But I do think it's important for us to reflect sometimes, because most of us have been here, other than Councillor Shan, who's actually Councillor Shan, I'll call as our newest member. I consider Councillor Hart's 30 years of city experience to sort of be a little bit more than Councillor Shan's 1 year as a councillor. But all of us have been here, and we've all lived here for a long time. None of us wants any of our neighbors to trip and fall, because it is not, it's not something that any of us want. And even if you're a fortunate person and you just slip and you fall on your bum and you get a little bruise, I would consider yourself lucky. I've had to deal with, as a councillor in my 14 years now, people who literally go flat down on the sidewalk, and they're elderly, and they're just, their faces are puffed up, their eyes are black, they've lost a tooth, they need dental work. It's not something any of us want. So when I look at that, what's in the report, and I think Councillor Hart is correct, I hope that our transportation staff will bring this to our attention in the next year's budget process. It may never go away, but I think most councillors, including ourselves, would say if it costs us a little bit more money to construct sidewalks in a slightly different manner so that we can reduce by X% the number of people who fall, I think we would all be very supportive. And I know it's very challenging, because at $15 million, most of us could build a community center for $15 million, not the big ones. Councillor Hart is laughing. No, maybe not anymore, but a small, modest little community center, or a daycare center, or I think a library, Councillor Ainsley, $15 million would build us a new library. So it is a lot of money, and there's competing uses. But again, given the potential for harm of a simple thing, like an uneven sidewalk or a sunken sidewalk or a tripping hazard, I think it merits us. I hope in the next budget cycle that we'll all consider. It may be an invisible item that goes under the radar, but it's something very profound if it happens to be your mother or your family member or your next door neighbor that happens to trip over that sidewalk and breaks an arm. So I thank staff for the report, and if there's more information that the Councillor Karygiannis needs, I'm certainly happy for us to make sure we have all the information we need to make good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Karygiannis?
Madam Chair, I've got a motion that I'd like to put up, and I'm advised that legal wants us to be a little bit more specific than in details. How about this, the full enchilada? Let me be very specific, and let me tell you why I'm coming at this. Although I respect my colleague Glenn de Beermaker about somebody breaking an arm and all that stuff, let me be real specific. A member of my family was walking on snow on a heave, and that member of my family broke her fibula. Now, it's not a funny thing, and it's not something we can say. We can set a SWAT team over there to fix these heaves. When you have a member of your family that falls down, breaks their fibula, and for you that don't know what a fibula is, that's the part of your bone between your knee and your ankle. The fibula comes out. The person is operated on a weekend, steel plate, 12 screws, and that person, after so many years, that part of the has not been fixed by the city, although the city was sued. It was settled. It costed a lot of money that I'm not allowed to speak about. That's why I'm asking for the real costs. I'm asking for the real costs because it's not only the cost that we bear, it's the cost to the individuals. And although that we might not see it, we might not talk about it, I have to tell you, it's tremendous. So I'd like to find out what exactly it's costing us for the 5 years. What is costing us to fix them? What is costing us for legal representations? What is costing us for us to hire those legal firms outside? What is costing in terms that you go to discoveries, you go to settlements? There's a lot of costs there. So I'm moving that you come back to us, please, in the first quarter of 2019 with the full cost. What the breakdown is, the cost to repair, the cost to represent, the cost of the insurance going up, the whole 9 yards. That's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Councillor Karygiannis. And so I'll just ask first, as chair, because legal needs further clarification on your motion, that further detail needs to be more in detail.
That's what I'm told that the legal department wants. So, I mean, if I can, I mean, if you allow me to, I'm looking for everything.
And can you say specifically what you're looking for?
I'm looking for the cost from the day that the claim starts until the claim is settled. What is the cost to the city? What is the cost to the city legal department? What is the cost to outside lawyers? And what is the cost that we bear in increase in insurance because of all the costs of all the lawsuits that we have?
And I'm just, sorry, I'm just wanted to know if that's in order for Scarborough Community Council's purview.
Madam Chair, I mean, we either get it here or somebody can put in a freedom of information and get it. I mean, it's either or. We either ask staff to provide it for us or a letter from one of us to the staff, and the staff will have to turn around and give it to us. I mean, this is not a choice that, you know, like, we need to know what the cost is. And if this is, you know, I mean, if this is shut down here, guess what? It doesn't take much brains for somebody to send a letter and get it. But I think that people need to know what the cost is, and we need to provide it for them. It's not that I'm against the trees. It's not that we take a chainsaw to cut down the trees, and it's not that we provide a SWAT team, as the fellow councilor had reported, that we go out and fix these things. I mean, we're way behind. But people fall, people get hurt on an everyday basis, and we need to address this. So if the cost is $20 million for us to offset this you know, the whole, if you want to call it the whole enchilada, versus providing Mr. Curry more money to fix the sidewalks, then you got a real case that you go to city council and say, look, legal department cost us $3 million, so we can spend $3 million to fix the heaves. You need to have it analyzed.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Karygiannis. So what we're going to do is just take a 5-minute recess. It just allows the clerk to confer with legal and just to make sure that everything is appropriate. They just want to get it legal.
I know, I appreciate it, but
Yeah.
can you go to the city and say, look, it's costing us.
No, exactly. I think they just want to get it in order. I support you. Yeah.
Well, okay, fine. Let them go track it.
They probably
James, we had, my wife got her in 2007. We didn't settle until 2013, 7 years later. I can't give up on this. But the amount of hours that my lawyer spent and back and forth to the city, it's tremendous. This is, so I think, what are you spending? You spending $5 million in legal costs? Fine. Shut down the legal department, $5 million to my house to go fix this damn thing.
Are you going anywhere for spring break?
Yeah, I'm going to Florida. Okay, let's
You're kind of right. I know.
finish this.
I know.
Can't wait.
I know.
I can look it up in the morning and fly out that night.
That's awesome. That's great.
Next Thursday night.
I know. I know.
Yeah, it's fun.
But this is awesome.
It's fun.
Has Janet from the Duncan recording?
I assume so, yeah. I'm 99% sure she is, yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of other people that run too, though.
I bet. It'll be a dog's breakfast in there.
Cheese, he was and you know, you never know what comes on the provincial election. Somebody gets unseated and they look around, so there's a ward that doesn't have anybody, I'm gonna run there, and you've got a big name potentially, right? Some big names could go down just because of the party, right?
Mitzi or...
That's what I'm thinking, right? Tracy, Charles, like any of those folks, right?
I think that they're in the city.
No, I'm not running for it.
Because it's looking fun.
Oh, no.
They have a big name, right? So they got the name. We
Shane,
done?
you're running. Are you running? Provincially? It's just bad for the Liberals now, eh?
Conservatives will always find a way to blow it, though.
I know, I hope so.
They're expert.
I hope so. I hope.
They're blowing themselves up.
I hope so.
Madam Chair, anytime you're ready,
Yeah,
you
you're
can
ready?
ask them
Okay.
to take their seat.
Okay.
Back to order.
Thank you. Just resuming here. Thank you so much to staff for working that out and coming up with a motion that's in order before us. So Councillor Karygiannis, you've read that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm fine with it, you know, and it's going to come up next term, but the point is that I want to thank staff for working and legal staff for putting this down. So we need to capture exactly what the cost is, so we can probably work towards.
Providing a SWAT team. Thank you.
Thank you. And so all those in favor of the motion? Oh, yes.
Would you consider it a friendly amendment? Because it's the cost of tree-related sidewalk disrepair claims. I think I would like to see all claims, because
That's quite-
I think the staff report, when you read it, and the staff's answers to us, is that the majority of hazards don't come from trees, they just come from,
But it's the minute, this is the minute. It's keeping it minute.
This is keeping it focused.
yes, but
Let's keep it focused.
If there were 20 claims, yeah,
It's not friendly.
Not friendly.
then I'll move an amendment.
Okay,
To
so,
include the words, cost of
Say-
tree-related.
Sorry, would you want to phrase this said as to the cost of tree-related and non-tree related?
Yes, yeah, that's what I was asking.
Fine, that's
Yeah.
okay with me.
That's friendly now? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Because, Madam Chair, again, if, for example, we're finding out that it's actually the telephone poles that are causing our sidewalks to heave, or the fact that they're being installed improperly, or the quality of the cement is no good, there's a whole bunch of reasons why we have tripping hazards. I want to see all of them. So I am interested as somebody who loves trees, and finding out that if trees are, you know, if there's an increase in incidents, the staff report tells us there's not actually, but I think it's good information, but I want to make sure we see it all. Okay, thank you.
is that friendly?
Yep.
All right, so are we got it. Okay. So the motion's before us. All those in favor? Opposed?
I'm not sure I understand.
Sorry, that's mine. Siri. Siri. Sorry about that. Yes, to change Siri.
Especially when it comes to the SWAT team.
Siri votes in favor. All those in favor, opposed, and that carries. Thank you very much. So that wraps up today, and we'll see you, and the enacting bills. So, Councillor de Beermaker, you have a motion to introduce and enact certain bills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to move that Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as bylaws Bills 199 to 204 and 206, prepared for the February 21st, 2018 meeting, 28 of the Community Council.
And shall these bills be passed and declared as bylaws? All those in favor, opposed, and that carries. And Councillor Shan, you have a motion to introduce and enact the confirming bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceeding of the Scarborough Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 28 on February 21st, 2018.
And shall this bill be passed and declared as bylaw? All those in favor, opposed, and that carries. That's great. We'll see you in March. Is it March? April. It'll be April at this point. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, thank you. Got it. Thank you. We did it. We always